Days of this war on Ukraine and counting. Nuclear missiles and high-tech armaments now marched on the streets of Moscow. The thermonuclear RS-24 Yards ballistic missile, which experts believe can carry up to 10 warheads, grabbed the center stage as this victory march took place in Moscow in full view. This intercontinental weapon weighs about 49.6 tons, has a range of 12,000 kilometers and can cruise at speeds of up to 24,500 kilometers per hour. And here images of Russian President Vladimir Putin shaking hands with spectators before a military parade on Victory Day, which marks the 77th anniversary of the victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. Putin's public appearance comes at a time when there were reports that suggested he was undergoing treatment for cancer. And Russian military might was in full display at the victory parade. A Russian self-propelled artillery vehicle, MSTAF, was seen rolling on the streets in Moscow as they flexed their muscle. And here Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of the Russian Land Forces Oleg Salyukov drove Oris cabriolet during a military parade. This year's parades aim to justify Russia's war in Ukraine, which has gone on longer and has costed a lot more than Moscow even expected. Now, the airborne part of the military parade on Moscow's Red Square was cancelled due to unfavorable weather conditions. It was intended to involve 77 fixed and rotary wing aircraft to represent the number of years that have passed since the end of 1941 to 1945 Great Patriotic War. Putin has defended his invasion of Ukraine in the Victory Day speech that he gave at Moscow's Red Square. Putin tied the Ukraine invasion to Second World War, saying that Russian soldiers were fighting for the same thing that their fathers, their grandfathers did. Russian president has launched a defense on his war in Ukraine, pivoting from a recognition of Russia's greatest generation to a description of how Ukraine was being armed by the West for an imminent attack on Crimea. Almost making it look like Russia is under threat from Ukraine, of course, the Western countries as well. Vladimir Putin now asserting that he was only protecting Russia and its people. Putin suggested Russia was forced into war by NATO, pledging to provide aid for the families of soldiers who had died in what the Kremlin is calling a special operation. That's a defined speech that's put together by President Vladimir Putin of Russia. Of course, nothing different expected. This has been Putin's stance right from the start, that this is a security issue. It's a threat to Russia if at all Ukraine joins NATO. Western countries, along with the United States, arming Ukraine is only threatening Russia's security and border. Now, aiming at trying to preserve Russian people, Russian borders, Putin says that this war or this invasion on Ukraine was inevitable and timely. Vladimir Putin in this Victory Day parade has remained firm on his stance. In fact, he has said time and again that Russian forces are only defending the motherland and that the forces continue to counter and battle the Nazis. This is Putin's stance, while he asserted in this victory speech, yet again, defiant Putin says this invasion was timely and needed. Now, the Russian invasion of Ukraine enters its 75th day. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has confirmed that 60 people who were taking shelter in a school in Bilohorivka, near the eastern city of Luhansk, were killed when the Russian forces bombed it this weekend. Following the relentless attacks on the port city of Mariupol, more than 170 civilians were successfully evacuated from the Azovstal steelworks and have arrived into Zaporizhia. Drone footage being widely circulated by European media shows the Ukrainian Su-27 striking Russian facilities, causing some serious damage on the famous Snake Island in the Black Sea. The footage filmed by a TB2 drone. That's what you see here. The Ukrainian S-300 missile system was also destroyed by a Russian Smerch rocket attack with cluster warheads. Meanwhile, Ukraine's military defeats 190 Russian troops, 15 tanks in eastern Ukraine on May 8th. The East Operational and Tactical Group reported that at least 12 infantry fighting vehicles, 12 armored personnel carriers, 1 armored fighting vehicle, 1 MTLB vehicle, 6 heavy artillery tractors, 1 fuel tank and 2 unmanned aerial vehicles were destroyed. Now, meanwhile, Russia continues its onslaught on Ukraine. You have the world leaders flocking into Ukraine. US First Lady Jill Biden made an unannounced visit to Ukraine after meeting refugee children and their mothers in Romania. Jill Biden met and visited a school in Romania's Bucharest, where she met with refugee children and their mothers. She was accompanied by wife of the President of Romania, Carmen Lohannis. Jill Biden also traveled to Ukraine in a surprise visit, met with Ukraine's First Lady Olena Zelenska, as Russia continued its onslaught on Ukraine. Jill Biden, after her visit, has said that she wanted to go to Ukraine on Mother's Day to send out a message that this war had to stop and that people of the United States were standing in solidarity with Ukrainians. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has also made a surprise visit to Irpin, which was damaged by Russian attacks. Justin Trudeau stood in solidarity with the Ukrainians. Now, Russian forces fired cruise missiles at the southern Ukrainian city of Odessa on Saturday, bombarded a besieged steel mill in Mariupol, hoping to complete their conquest of the port in time for Victory Day celebrations. In fact, Ukraine has now announced that all women, children and older adults have been evacuated from the mill, a key Russian war objective. Here's what happened.
The Russia-Ukraine war has been going on for over 2.5 months now. Putin's army fired a cruise missile at the southern Ukrainian city of Odessa on Saturday and bombarded the besieged steel mill in Mariupol. Hopeful to complete their conquest of the port city in time for Russian Victory Day celebrations on Monday. Amid raining missiles, shells and bombardments in Ukraine, Russia is marking 77 years of victory over Nazi Germany.
May 9th is a very important day after the surrender of Germany on the 8th of May. But the Soviet Union played a very important role in the defeat of Germany. But the message loud and clear, that's the Soviet banner, and the message this time around is going to be reminding the world, reminding Ukraine that they were part of the Soviet Union. It's uncanny and eerie that as Russia and many parts of Europe will be celebrating or marking the occasion of the end of World War II in Europe, the defeat of Germany, Russia is on the brink of yet another war. Will it lead to World War III is the big question.
Ukraine fears its troops still holed up in the Azovstal plant face massacre after the evacuation of all women, children and the elderly. Ukraine's military flattened Russian positions on a Black Sea island that was captured in the war's first days has now become a symbol of resistance.
This is the last place in Mariupol where Ukrainian forces are still, occupying. So it seems that in days to come there will be an offensive launched by the Russian side on the Azovstal steel plant to flush out Ukrainian soldiers who are there.
Ukrainian counter-offensive is advancing around the second largest city, Kharkiv, a key target of the Russian shelling. Will the fall of Mariupol, timed with the day of biggest celebrations of Russian war capabilities, mark a decisive phase of the Ukrainian war? With Geeta Mohan in Moscow and Abhishek Bhalla in Kyiv, Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, Russian forces have been attacking Odessa, fueling speculation that they might want to take the strategic port on the Black Sea. Here's what's happening.
Russia sets its eyes on Ukraine's lifeline. Recent missile strikes on Odessa in Ukraine's south is fueling speculation about Russia's plan to take the strategic port on the Black Sea. Odessa, which connects Ukraine to the rest of the world, is being pounded with deadly missiles. The largely Russian-speaking city and the cultural hub has seen increased attacks by Moscow in recent weeks. On the 2nd of May, a teenage boy was killed and several injured in Russian strikes on a residential building.
The war between the armies might be restricted to some battle zones, but residential areas across Ukraine continue to get pounded by Russian missiles. Yet another fresh attack in Odessa, the all-important port town in south of Ukraine, which is strategically very important for Russia as well as Ukraine.
Ukrainian troops with their newly supplied military platforms have shifted tactics from defensive to offensive in the region. Ukrainian drones recently sank 2 Russian patrol boats near the Black Sea Snake Island, indicating that the war is far from over. The destruction of the Russian Slava-class cruiser and the flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, Moskva, the 600-foot, 12,500-ton displacement, was a massive blow to the Russian Navy.
Russian operations in the Black Sea are being considered extremely significant, and the Ukrainian forces have put in all their resources to defend the Black Sea. It is apprehended that amphibious attacks are likely to take place from the Russian side. There is a huge fleet of the Russian Navy in the Black Sea. There are about 24 warships, several submarines that are there in the Black Sea.
With fierce fighting in cities along Ukraine's southern coast, the key city of Odessa is preparing its defenses to protect the port city from an amphibious attack. On the Russian side, Moscow is strengthening its naval presence to break Kyiv's morale and resistance.
Can you give us a sense of what the situation has been in the south of Ukraine, especially the threat from the Russian side in the Black Sea? What kind of activities they have been up to?
The situation is stable and is under control. However, the Russian Federation still keeps the ships in the Black Sea, which is of threat to Ukraine. And the risk of rocket missiles launch is very high right now.
What kind of deployment do they have in the Black Sea?
The situation right now is dynamic and it changes all the time. But currently, they have several warships which keep the cruise missile on board, as well as several submarines.
Russians and Ukrainians fought together in the Second World War against the Nazi Germany. And this war memorial in Odessa is in memory of those who laid down their lives during the Second World War. And now this war memorial is even more significant as far as the Ukrainians are concerned. Especially the Ukrainian military says that this war memorial now represents the fight and the valor of the Ukrainian soldiers who are taking on the Russian assault. With camera person Parminder Sharma, this is Abhishek Bhalla in Odessa for India Today.
Now, we're looking at Vladimir Putin defending his invasion on Ukraine. In his Victory Day speech at Moscow's Red Square, Putin has tied the Ukrainian invasion to Second World War, saying that Russian soldiers were fighting for the same thing that their fathers, their grandfathers did. Russian president has launched a defense of his war on Ukraine, pivoting from a recognition of Russia's greatest generation to now a description of how Ukraine was armed by the West for an imminent attack on Crimea. Now, Putin suggested that Russia was forced into war by NATO, pledging to provide aid for families of soldiers who died in what the Kremlin is calling now a special operation. Let me quickly cut across to Geeta Mohan, who's been tracking those developments right from the spot. Geeta, massive Victory Day parade for the Russians, where they literally flex their arms, ammunition, while the war is still on 75 days and on. Did not expect anything different in terms of a speech from Putin. He was defiant, and he did assert that this invasion was timely and needed.
Well, this certainly is a very defiant Putin, who says that the reason why Russia had to do what it had to is because Russia's existence was under threat. Now, there are a few red lines that he spelled out very clearly, which has to do with NATO, expansion eastwards, as also Ukraine planning on or even talking about going nuclear. These are two no-go areas for Russia. And also, more importantly, he not only spoke about West and the double standards that West holds, but also reasserted the idea of Soviet Union, people being together, that they fought Nazi Germany together, and trying to say that this is one of the similar kind of wars that now Russia is waging against not Ukraine per se, meaning the people, but against the West, and Ukraine is just a proxy. So a lot of layers within the statement that he made, but he made it very clear that there is no way that Russia is going to go back. There was no declaration of war, so to say, as many speculated even here in Moscow, because there is no idea of war or taking on Ukraine. This they consider an operation where the eastern parts of Ukraine will have to be secured for Russia to ensure its own interests are secure. So that certainly was the message that Russian President Putin put across when it comes to the speech, the address that he made to the nation on Victory Day. So keeping the Victory Day in mind, keeping the Soviet Union's victory in mind, he spoke of why it is important at this time, at this point in time, to ensure a victory even in this war, to ensure Russia's existence, that Russia should not cease to exist. That's the idea that the Russian side has been putting forth, that if things change in Ukraine, should Ukraine join the NATO, NATO in Russia's backyard is going to be and is considered a threat to Russia's existence itself.